we'll start with the thank yous to everyone again. I was saying that it's great to see so many people from all over the world with us today, and also knowing that for a lot of you, especially in the Northern Hemisphere, it's probably going to be peak season. So we really appreciate you taking the time to be here with us. And hopefully that after this session, it will be even a busier season with all the tips that our hosts are going to be sharing with you. Like I said as well, let's start with some webinar structure recap. I will not share my screen just in case before we get into the presentation, just to make sure that you can all hear as well. But basically the structure is I'm going to introduce again Becca and John, our two speakers for today. Then I will do a small presentation, like a couple of slides about Lodgify for those of you that don't know us. And then we'll get into the nitty-gritty of the session, which are the presentations from Becca about maximizing revenue through data and pricing strategies, and the presentation from John about real-world case studies and how to review strategic decisions and results. So those are the main topics of the webinar. And as I also mentioned, we cannot hear you, but we can see your comments. Thanks for that. Otherwise, we might have been going on and on and on, and no one could have heard us. So thank you guys for letting us know about this technical issue. It's good to see that it's working now. As you know, you can use the chat. You can also use the Q&A section on the right to leave any questions. In case you cannot hear or see, please refresh the page, because I see that it's working now here for most people. If not, otherwise, if you can maybe try a different browser. Okay, it's working now. Great. And now let me present again. Let me pull up my presentation so I can, hopefully it will work this time. If not, again, please message us. And here we are again with our two speakers for today. Becca Madigan from PriceLabs, Solution Consultant Manager. Thank you, Becca. You can introduce yourself again.
Hey, everyone. For who couldn't hear me before, my name's Becca. I lead the U.S. Solutions team here at PriceLabs. I'll talk a little bit more about what we do when I give the presentation, but I'm based out of Charleston and actually used to be a property manager. So have been in a lot of y'all's shoes before, and looking forward to talk about, how to improve revenue and, do revenue management.
All right. Thank you, Becca. And we also have John Ann with us, which is the founder and CEO of TechTape. Thank you, John, again, for being with us today.
Thanks, Alberto. Hi, everyone. My name is John An, and I founded TechTape. We provide revenue management services for property managers all around the world. And we use tools like PriceLabs to help us execute the work. And we're really looking forward to sharing some of the results that we've achieved over the past year.
Thank you, John. So as I mentioned, I'll just share a couple of slides about Lodgify for those of you that don't know us, but it will be quick because I want Becca and John to be the main protagonists today. Just for those of you that, like I said, don't know us, Lodgify is an all-in-one vacation rental software for independent hosts and property managers that provides all the tools that you need to start, manage, and grow a short-term rental business. From creating your own website to guest management, you have all the tools from our PMS to succeed in this ever more competitive vacation rental industry. Obviously, I'm not going to talk about all the features Lodgify has, just because I think this is also relevant for the purpose of this presentation. We have recently launched a dynamic pricing solution that analyzes over 40 attributes and market trends to give you a price for your rates dynamically. But we also integrate with third-party apps, including PriceLabs here, that also offers an amazing dynamic pricing solution. And here are some of the other dynamic pricing or insurance, guest experience, cleaning, turnover, third-party apps that we integrate with, in case you're also interested in all of those extra services, let's say. I promise I'll be quick. That will be the last of it. Just before I go, just FYI for everyone, we have running a sale at the moment with 40% discount for our professional ultimate yearly plans with free onboarding. So if you want to try Lodgify now, it's the best time. You can just scan the QR code on the top of the screen, and you can buy Lodgify at a big discount rate for new customers. So I will stop with that. Now, Becca, you're the first one to go. I'll stop sharing, and I will leave you to share your own screen.
Well, thanks, Alberto. Let me do this. Make sure I'm sharing the right thing. Okay, can everybody see my screen? I get a thumbs up or a okay in chat? Okay, cool. Hopefully, if you're not able to see or hear me, put it in chat. Beautiful. Cool. So again, my name is Becca. I lead the US Solutions team at PriceLabs. My team is here. We're interacting with our customers every single day, doing just basic demos, teaching people about our tools, but also helping with onboarding and long-term account management. So we hear the struggles that property managers and revenue managers are facing every single day. Today, we're going to go through just some basic strategies that if you aren't currently doing revenue management, these are the absolute basic steps that you need to be doing. Whether you use PriceLabs or Lodgify's own tool, completely up to you. Of course, I'm a little bit, partial to PriceLabs, just being here, but both tools are really, really great. And I will say, let's actually move to the next one here. So there's 3 key elements that we're going to go over today. So first is your dynamic pricing. Second is understanding your market and competition. And then third is setting up your minimum length of stay. If you're doing these 3 things, you're going to see a huge improvement in not only how much time you're spending on your rates and your strategies, but also you're going to see much more improvement in your bottom line as well. We will also spend a little bit of time talking about some key metrics that you should be tracking for success. And of course, John actually is one of our partners, our revenue management partners that we work with. So he works with a ton of PriceLabs customers, helps them set up their accounts, and helps them with sort of like that third part. So if you have like the basic setup, John's going to be there to help you actually fine tune and really understand the data and really make strategic decisions based off of that. So really excited to hear what he has to say too. And hopefully some of this will provide some background into what he's going to be talking about. So getting back into those 3 key elements. So first we have dynamic pricing. Now you've probably heard of dynamic pricing before in the short-term rental industry or elsewhere. I think Wendy's was recently in the news for potentially using dynamic pricing in the future, but it doesn't all have to be kind of scary like that. Basically, dynamic pricing has been something that we've been doing for a long time, maybe not in the short-term rental industry, but even just at your local bar, a happy hour could kind of be considered like dynamic pricing, right? So essentially what you want to do is price correctly for demand changes in your market. And how do we do that? If you're not using a dynamic pricing tool, you could maybe take a look at your own occupancy, but if you only have a couple of listings, it's really hard to make sort of broad assumptions about the market if you don't have a large inventory. So that's where market data is going to come in. So you can do this yourself by just maybe, purchasing data from someone or somewhere, or just going on Airbnb, Vrbo, your competitors' websites, and kind of seeing what their rates are and what dates are booked up or not. But that's going to take a ton of time. So by using a dynamic pricing tool, you are actually going to really save some time and hopefully get actually ahead of what's going on in the market versus sort of always trying to catch up to it. Now, our second key element is actually your minimum stay. Now, this is a tool that I really think is overlooked by a lot of property managers and even sometimes revenue managers. So controlling your minimum stay is really key because we want to fill your calendars in an efficient manner. We want to actually set up your minimum stay profiles or your minimum stay strategies based on what's going on in the market, demand in the market. You don't want to have a 7-night stay if everybody's just coming for a short weekend, right? So using data to set that up can actually really increase both your occupancy and at the end of the day, your revenue. And then the third step is this market insights and benchmarking. So really learning from your market and your competition, understanding the environment that we are pricing in, and using that to make, again, those just strategic decisions that are going to set you apart from the rest of the pack. So diving into dynamic pricing again and again, you can use a PriceLabs tool, you can use Lodgify's tool. There are a lot of different resources out there, but if you're not using one, I really, really recommend that you do. It's going to allow you to quickly react to demand. So again, if you're just going in and sort of like looking at data yourself, whether it's purchasing it or just going on those websites, it's going to be really hard to actually be doing that every single day. And you might actually miss signals, right? And then not only are you, even if you are seeing those signals, actually translating like, okay, I'm seeing this happen. What should I do with my rates? That's like a really complex decision. There's a lot of different variables in there. So by using a dynamic pricing tool that is able to consume all this market data and sort of understand that for you is going to take a lot of time and effort sort of off of your back. We're going to eliminate some manual efforts that you're doing. So even if you are going in and updating your rates on a daily basis, any manual updates that you're doing are sort of leaving you open for human error. When I was a property manager, I remember setting rates, and in my old system, there was like a monthly rate and a weekly rate, and I would actually switch them. So we would get, we'd get these really low bookings, or we wouldn't be getting bookings and we'd be confused out of why. And it's just because I put, the wrong number, or, you forget to add a zero. It happens to the best of us, especially when we're in high season, like we are in many markets right now. So trying to get rid of all of those manual efforts and also just generally gain back your time, whether you're going to then focus it on making more strategic decisions about your revenue management or spending that extra 5 minutes in a property to make sure that it's perfect for guest arrival. Your time is money, and that's something that really is important in your operations. So let's dive in. I've talked a little bit about, using a dynamic pricing tool, but what does that mean? Like, what does that actually look like? So most dynamic pricing tools are going to use an algorithm. It's essentially AI, or a form of AI. We allow you to customize how our algorithm works. So you start with a base price. This is like an average rate for your entire year. And then we're going to raise and lower off of that price based on various factors, both market factors and then as well as the user controls. So with PriceLabs, our algorithm is a hyper-local model, meaning that we're looking at about 350 of your closest similarly sized competitors around you. We're paying attention a little bit to their rates, but primarily what we're looking at is occupancy over the next year forward looking, and then 2 years of historic data. And we're making essentially, guess this isn't the word, we're estimating what occupancy is going to be on every single day, along with a bunch of other stuff to come up with that final price. But you can break it down sort of into these 5 things: seasonality, day of week, lead time, neighborhood demand, and internal occupancy. So all of those factors are being pre-calculated for you and spit out as a final rate. So otherwise, if you were just doing, again, this research by yourself, you'd have to really understand those 5 factors in order to accurately price your listings. And then, of course, this user control is just as important because as business operators, you probably have different goals for your market. You have different goals for your inventory, and your owners, if you are managing others' properties, probably have opinions about how they want things as well, whether they're right or wrong. We sometimes have to cater to them as a property manager. So this user control allows you to more or less like build your own algorithm, because if you're looking at your inventory and your competitor's inventory down the road, you might really try to be getting more occupancy or higher ADRs if you have like a luxury offering. So the user control, where you can actually tweak the algorithm to your needs, is really, really important. And one of those is actually sort of our second feature that we're going to talk about. And this is our stay restrictions section. And Alberto, if there's any questions that come up while I'm speaking, feel free to interrupt me. I know we'll have time at the end, but if there's anything that needs clarifying, I'm not looking at the Q&A right now, so just feel free to interrupt me. So thank you. Customizing stay restrictions is actually our sort of next factor that we're going to be looking at. And this is one of the things that you can customize in PriceLabs. Now, we typically recommend offering a cascading minimum stay. And that essentially means having a more strict or longer minimum stay further out on your calendar, and then becoming a little bit more flexible as the dates get closer or as your calendar starts to fill in. So this could mean, offering maybe if your market can withstand it, a 7-night minimum. a 7-night minimum far out, and then maybe dropping it to like 3 nights, and then maybe dropping it to like 1 or 2 nights last minute. And of course, ensuring that any dates that are gaps are also just automatically bookable. You don't want to be going into your calendar and having to manually update the gaps and keep an eye out for them. You want everything to be updated and ready to book if it's available. So why are we going to use these dynamic minimum stays? One, we're targeting higher value bookings. You might know maybe in your market that it's sort of like a weekend market and you would really just want to get a 2-night booking on a weekend. But if people are booking really far in advance and they're booking a 1 or 2-night stay, it's going to be really, really hard for you to actually fill in the dates around, even without gaps, which is sort of this next point. If you have a Saturday night booking in a weekend market, it's going to be really hard for you to book Friday and also Sunday if you just have that 1-night stay kind of floating there 6 months out before anybody else is even looking to book in your market. So by targeting high value bookings, being a little bit more selective about the bookings that are coming in on your calendar, you're going to actually increase your revenue and also fill your calendar more efficiently. Next is the orphan gaps. Essentially, we consider an orphan gap any date that is sort of in between 2 bookings or 2 unavailable dates. Maybe you're doing a kitchen renovation or something, and then somebody else books maybe like 2 or 3 days after your block ends. Those 2 and 3-night stays are actually really hard to fill sometimes, especially if they're midweek. So a couple of things that we can automate or we recommend doing is make those minimum stays flexible so that if there is a gap on your calendar, if you would normally have, a 3-night minimum and you have 2 nights available on your calendar, automate that. Make it so you don't have to go in and manually make that change. You can also automate discounts or premiums, right? If you're okay with dropping your rates a little bit to make that sort of 2-night gap a little bit more appealing to book, go ahead and automate a little bit of a discount there. I did mention premiums. Sometimes people don't feel comfortable offering 1 or 2-night gaps. You can also raise your prices to make it a little bit more worth it to you. And then finally, operational preference. So you want to really, there are 2 different fields of thought, like if you're making money off of like a cleaning or something, sometimes people do like really short stays and sort of filling their calendar in there. But shorter stays typically mean, more wear and tear on the property. Higher turnovers means, your staff is having to go in and clean and inspect and deal with more guests. So sometimes operational preference is for longer stays. And by using dynamic minimum stay restrictions, you're able to really help your operations team as well. Now, there's ways to get data around what your minimum stay should be. We offer in our market dashboards these really great charts that actually show, how far in advance bookings are being made and how long people are actually booking for. So length of stay as well as booking window. But I used to show people these charts all the time and people would just sort of blankly look at me like, okay, well, what do I do with this? So PriceLabs did launch this cutting edge minimum stay recommendation engine. So essentially we're pulling all of that data from similar size listings in your market, and we're coming up with a recommendation based on the stays that have been booked in the past year. So in this one, it's a little bit hard to kind of read if you're not used to the PriceLabs sort of structure. But for this market, I'm not sure where it is. We're saying normally you should shoot for a 2-night minimum. And then these are essentially like exceptions to that rule. So we're going to make an exception for any orphan nights that come up on our calendar. Last minute, we're going to make an exception, dropping down to 1 night within 6 nights, and then 1 night for weekdays and 2 nights for weekends within 29 nights. And then far out, we're actually raising that to be a 3-night minimum. So again, that sort of cascading model where we're trying to get longer stays further out, targeting our primary minimum stay during our normal booking window, and then being a little bit more flexible last minute. Now, when we were developing this minimum stay recommendation engine, and again, I think this is still the only one in any dynamic pricing tool, we did a lot of studies and we actually found that if you are managing your minimum stay with data and doing it sort of in an automated sense, you can potentially increase your revenue by up to 10%. So don't sleep on this one. It's minimum stay can be kind of boring, but it's just as important as some of the other metrics that we'll be talking about. So the final thing that we wanted to talk about before we get into some quick metrics, and I know I'm kind of running over here, so John, feel free to kick me off whenever you want me to, is understanding your market, right? And this is a lot of where actually John is going to come in. We do have some cool features like our AI insights to help you answer some of these questions if you're not really a graph person. But once you sort of have the basics set up in your dynamic pricing tool, you have those minimum stay set up, you're going to really want to understand your market. That way, when problems come up or when your market changes, you can sort of recognize those signals and adjust your strategy. So just a couple of key questions to I would almost have each of you ask yourself, do you know these 5 points about your market? Do you know how your pricing and occupancy of your listings is actually compared to your competitors? When's your high season? When's your low season? Are there any upcoming events or high demand dates that are incoming in your market? How is this going to affect your revenue, and what's your plan around those dates? What's your minimum stay plan? What's your pricing plan? Is your occupancy down? Is it the market or you or any of this? So if you don't know these questions, you're kind of going into revenue management blind. You almost want to establish goals when you're thinking about revenue management and then use the data to find those answers. And that's where our market insights really come in as well. So just within our dynamic pricing tool, there is free insights into your markets, your closest competitors. You can use our rate shopper. You can look at our occupancy and pricing graphs. There's a lot of really great information in there. But I am going to move on because I know I'm short on time and we have some key metrics. Again, John, if I'm cutting in too much, just let me know. So first metric is average daily rate. So how we come up with your average daily rate, and we're not talking about necessarily listed rates, but these are nights that have actually been booked. So your average daily rate is your total revenue divided by the total number of nights booked. That's going to be your ADR. So quick little math thing here. Day 1 rented for $500, day 2 rented for $500, and then day 3, because we're using dynamic pricing, rented for $540. So your total for this stay is $1,540 for that 3-night booking. To come up with your average, you're going to divide $1,540 by 3, and it's going to give you $513 USD. Now, your average daily rate is really good to help you understand the value of the bookings that you're receiving, but it's not necessarily a all-encompassing KPI or key performance indicator, because you could maybe have one booking that is $1,000 a night and it was only 2 nights out of an entire month, and that's not actually going to give you the full picture of your performance. So that brings us to metric number 2. And this is your occupancy rate. So occupancy is essentially the number of nights booked out of the total number of nights available. So say you book 15 nights out of 30 days in June, your occupancy rate is going to be 50%. Or in this example, if your property was available for 100 nights and you sold 80 of them, your occupancy rate is going to be 80. Now, this is a really good metric, again, to sort of understand how your business is doing. But just like with ADR, it isn't really fully encompassing the value. It's not missing the value, right? You could be 100% booked, but if you rented at $2 a night, you're not really doing it that well. So that brings us to our third metric that you really need to be paying attention to, and this is RevPAR, revenue per available rental. Is how we define it. Sometimes you will see it as RevPAN, revenue per available night. They're essentially the same thing. This is a metric that we kind of have borrowed from the hotel industry. And it's a better measure of your success, right? Because we're balancing your average daily rate and your occupancy. So to actually come up with RevPAR, you're going to say, say my average daily rate is 300, my occupancy rate was 67, RevPAR is 201. Now, with RevPAR, you want to set goals sort of based on your seasonality, based on what you've done in the past. I would say a good way to think about RevPAR is you always want to see it increasing over time, increasing year over year. There isn't like a goal RevPAR. Like I'm not going to tell all of you your RevPAR needs to be 500 because that doesn't really pan out. Generally speaking, use this for benchmarking and see how it's changing over time and see how it compares year over year. And honestly, if you're not sure how to do that, that's what John is here for. He's the number wizard. And I'm going to actually just pass this over to him because I know I'm going over a little bit.
Thank you, Becca. Really good presentation. It's amazing how to see how technology can help people. Especially save time, increase revenue. There's quite a few questions about this, but we will take them at the end so we can leave John time for his presentation, and then we will take all the presentations. I don't know what's going on with Crowdcast today. It's acting quite weird, so I cannot pin the questions, ask questions in the Q&A, but I have them here in the chat, so when we can pull them up again later. But yeah, thank you again. Super interesting. Just also FYI, like PriceLabs is obviously an amazing tool, and we at Lodgify, we integrate with them. So you're a Lodgify customer, you can integrate with PriceLabs to connect your bookings with their system, and you can also get access to all of these amazing features that Becca mentioned. So thank you again, Becca. And John, your time.
All right, I'm gonna try sharing my screen. Let's see. I think it would be this.
We've got you.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, all good.
Hear you. We can see you.
Okay. Now, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So thank you, Becca. Really good background and understanding of how dynamic pricing works and kind of the inputs going in. I did see some questions coming in the chat saying, doesn't this, if everyone uses it, do I not have no one actually gets a competitive advantage? And I'll kind of go over this in a way that I think as we're going through it, you'll see examples and then also kind of an understanding. But anyway, first and foremost, my name is John On. I'm the CEO and founder of TechTape. And we provide done-for-you revenue management services for the short-term rental industry. We work all around the world, mostly in the US. That's where I am based. I'm in New Jersey. But we've been able to prove out our systematic approach, in many, many different types of markets around the world. So today, based on what Becca was saying, my goal is really to kind of not just talk about what we need to do, but also show a few case studies and try to talk through the thought process that went through in making decisions, and then we could also see the results. But before we get to there, I want to just share a couple concepts or ideas that are important in terms of managing your revenue. So the first part is that using these amazing tools like PriceLabs or Lodgify, they are tools and they really help you, but it has to be utilized in a consistent way to adjust your strategy. And so the way I look at this world is, tools like Lodgify and PriceLabs, they are amazing pieces of technology, right? They're like the Formula One race car. But if you don't have a driver, or if you have a driver who doesn't know how to drive, you're not going to win the Grand Prix. You need someone to drive it. And that's not to say that, I have to be the one, TechTape has to be the one driving it. You can be the one driving it, but someone has to drive it. And so you need a revenue manager, whether it's yourself or, you hire out or you hire internally, someone managing it. And so to get to that question about, if you use this tool, you don't have a competitive advantage, It's really how you use the tool and how you implement the strategy, having all the information that's important. I guess the other way I can kind of explain this in a very blunt way is anyone can go to Home Depot and buy a hammer, but you're not going to come home and say, hey, the hammer doesn't work, right? You have to know how to use the hammer to build a house. Similarly, you need to know how to drive these dynamic pricing tools in order to get the optimum results. It's not just going to do it for you. And part of doing that is systematic consistency, doing that process in a systematic way over time. The way I like to talk about it is it's kind of like a flywheel, right? It takes a lot of effort initially to get a flywheel going. And then once you start getting it going, it's a little bit of force that keeps it going. And likewise, revenue management happens over time. And so that has to happen consistently over time in order for you to really get the results that you want. And as you're making these changes, there are lots of factors that are changing within your market, right? Your supply, the demand, the quality of the inventory around you. And so within short-term rentals, you have to be really nimble and adjust as things shift. But if you have a systematic process, then it's like driving. You're making tiny little adjustments along the way to stay on course rather than making these big moves all the time. In fact, in revenue management, if you're doing this, you're not actually managing. You're just like reacting every time there's like something in front of you. So another piece of the concept is short-term rentals. A lot of the dynamic pricing and revenue management came from the hotel industry, but there are some key fundamental differences. Short-term rental, every property is a unique property because it has its own unique listing. So even if it's in the same condominium complex, just the fact that it has a separate listing with separate descriptions, separate pictures, means that it's actually not identical. And hotels, the vast majority of the inventory is identical, right? You have one listing, and then when you book it, it's one of the hundreds of rooms that's available. Relative to the variables for the pricing for the accommodation itself, short-term rentals have lots more variables than hotels. Obviously, hotels, you have food and beverage and all that, but if you put that all aside, hotel, it's like a commodity product, and there's not infinite, but there's a lot of the same supply available. The key thing in short-term rentals is everyone plays by a different set of rules. There's no revenue management school for the short-term rental industry, where in the hotel space there is, and that I'm going to show that in the next slide. And so in short-term rentals, it's the data points on aggregation of a lot of people kind of playing by their own rules, while in the hotel space, it's a lot of people playing by similar rules with similar inventory. So the way I look at hotel revenue management, again, you can take courses on how to be a revenue manager for hotels. So the way I look at it is it's like archery at the Olympics, right? Everyone's trained in a similar way, similar fashion. And at the Olympics, you could have 100 arrows shot at the bullseye. Not everyone's going to hit the bullseye, but you take the 100 arrows, you take the average, and then the next arrow that's shot is going to fall somewhere within that average. So that's how I look at hotel revenue management. Short-term rental revenue management is like playing darts at a bar and everyone is drunk, right? Everyone's kind of throwing their darts. You could have 100 darts thrown at the target. You could still calculate an average of where all those darts land, but I can almost guarantee you that the next dart that's thrown is not going to land anywhere close to that bullseye because everyone's playing by their own set of rules. So the philosophy that we take is short-term rental data is really important for insights, for trends in the overall market, because things are going up, things are going down, things are slowing down, things are heating up. Those trends, the aggregated data tells, but then trying to pinpoint the exact ADR or the exact occupancy that you should be targeting, that's challenging from our perspective because it's a lot of data, of people playing by their own set of rules. So we take kind of a loose approach to the data that we're looking at, and the data that PriceLabs and other data sources provide are highly, highly, highly important in understanding the trends that we make our decisions upon. But we are never trying to say, oh, the market data says everybody's at 65%, so I'm going to try to achieve a 65% occupancy. Or it says the market data shows that the ADR is $257, so I'm going to try to achieve that $257 because the data is very fragmented. Becca, feel free to jump in and contradict what I'm saying. Next point is that not too many people talk about risk profile, but risk profile of the manager and the owner has a huge impact, right? And so imagine there was a multiverse, and there's Spider-Man on one side, and there's the Prowler on the other side. So the Spider-Man, let's say, has a high risk tolerance, and the Prowler has low risk tolerance. Under the same exact market conditions with the same exact property at the same exact time, one will make more money and one will make less money, and both will be satisfied with what they made because it aligned with their risk profile. I hope that makes sense. I don't want to dive too deep into this, but if you try to force someone to be more risky than what they're comfortable with, they're going to freak out. If you try to be more risk tolerant than they want to be, they're also going to freak out saying you're giving away their property. And so risk profile has a huge impact on the actual end result. So that's something that we're highly aware of as we are working with our partners. So let's go into the case studies. I'm going to go over 4 case studies, and I'm going to try to talk about the risk and the decisions that we made. I know we're running low on time, so I'll try to be quick, and then we can answer some questions along the way. So this first property is actually a property that I own, and I've owned since about 2018, I believe. And actually, it was this and another property in Hawaii that got me into revenue management because we were routinely generating in excess of $200,000 in gross revenue. In 2023, we achieved $222,000 in gross revenue. This is a 2-bedroom, 2-bath condo. So there are lots of these similar units in the building. So if you look at our 2023 year-to-date performance, we are slightly behind our 2020. Sorry, if we look at our 2024 performance relative to 2023, we are slightly behind in terms of total revenue. Our ADR is down quite substantially, but we were able to make up some of that revenue and occupancy during this time. The story behind this property is, really quickly, Hawaii was completely shut down in 2020 during COVID. I mean, literally, like no one was coming in, coming out. Beginning of 2021 is when there was a end of 2020, there started to be some travel. We started seeing some travel, but it was very volatile, and the market really didn't know how much to charge because some people were coming, they weren't coming. So it was very volatile. So our ADR stayed fairly consistent, but then our occupancy shifted. So you can see that we've went down in February and came back up. Starting in April, we started seeing some pickup in the summertime, and so as we were stabilizing in April, we actually started pushing up our rates further out in the summertime. Real, quick story. Basically, we just kept on. We saw the demand increasing and increasing, and the pent-up demand for a 2-bedroom, 2-bath condo, we were getting above $1,000 a night in July of 2021, right? We saw the demand coming, and we kept on pushing it up to match that demand. And then it started settling back down in August, and then throughout the rest of the year. 2022 was way more stable, right? It was kind of consistent. And then again, about it's usually about a month and a half to 2 months in advance that we kind of look out to figure out the signals in the market. And that's when we actually started seeing that a heightened demand in the fall time. And that, in hindsight, aligned with when people didn't have to go back to work and didn't have to go back to school, right? And so that's when, there were travelers just kind of traveling along and staying for months at a time. And so that was the peak that we were able to capture. 2023 was fairly stable, and we ended at 222,000. And so 2024, what's interesting is we started out slow. There was a dip. We're seeing a rise in in the summertime, and we anticipate the rest of the year will close out similar to 2023. So we're making decisions based on how we're seeing the demand fluctuating up and down within our market and within our property. I need to go faster. This is a portfolio in Tucson, Arizona. It's a portfolio. It's actually grown to 70 by now, but at the time it was 60. So we came on board at the end of July of 2023. So at this point, the solid black line. And when we started, there was about 10% occupancy across the 60 portfolio property. And so initially, we really focused on really getting a lot of occupancy just to get the revenue generated. And so we were able to catch up in August and have a decent performance there. So that's where we kept the rates at a relatively low ADR to get more occupancy. And the positive part was the manager was very flexible in working with us to do that. Since then, as we're doing that, we were looking further out and capturing some of the higher value bookings months out. And then as these months came, we filled it in with lower value bookings. And so if you can see this, September, October, November, December were higher in RevPAR than 2021, 2022. And then so then starting in November, February is a really strong month in Tucson. And so the manager said, hey, I want to really play last man standing, hold out our inventory. And so we actually really jacked up the prices for late January, early February, and only let a handful, maybe about 15% of the occupancy to get captured at that high rate. And then as we got into mid-December, he then said, hey, our February is not filled up yet. And so at that point, we shifted that strategy to make it so that more bookings would come in at an above average to average rate. And by implementing that strategy, again, you could see highest RevPAR in 2024 than any other year in the past. And I'll just close out on the summertime here. Summer is a slow period. And so starting in April, we started discounting rates to really capture the occupancy for the summer. And again, that has enabled us to really have, again, the best RevPAR in 2024 for this 60 property portfolio. You know what? In the interest of time, I'm going to skip this one and I'll just go to the last one. Actually, you know what? I don't want to skip this one because it seems like I'm cheating. This is a 4-bedroom house in Maryland. This is, if anybody knows, this is the personal house of Brooke Fouts, the illustrious Brooke Fouts that I'm providing revenue management for. Just really quickly, it's a very seasonal market. I'll just focus on this blip here. 2024 started slow, and then we saw a little pickup. And so Brooke and I decided to really push the revenue, the ADR, and it was working. Like we were getting really high value bookings in June, May, and even into July. And so we got very high value bookings in July, but between his risk, wanting to continue to push it and my willingness to go along with that, we actually ended up at the end of June with about 10 days unoccupied. So about a 60% occupancy at very high rates. And then so because of that, right now, we're working to capture some additional occupancy to fill this out. We're not going to get it up to the peak, But if you see, by the end of July, we're probably going to be somewhere around this level. And then we are working on kind of closing out August so that we end up somewhere around here. And so we should end up at around 80,000 this year. But that's kind of the adjustment and strategy along the way. Alberto, how am I doing on time?
You're good. You have there's 10 minutes left. I mean, if you guys are okay, we can exceed a few, 5-10 minutes more to answer some of the questions. So it's fine by me. Yeah,
okay,
Becca says you as well. So take your time. You can breathe, John, and you can continue. It's fine. We can exceed a few more minutes. It's okay.
Okay. All right. So this last one is this one's like a grand slam example. So it's not something that we achieve for every property, every owner. But it's one house in New Jersey valued at about $1 million. It's in an urban enterprise zone, which is basically not a luxury town. It's a town that gets tax breaks to try to get the economy going and everything. This house, it's a 12-bedroom mansion, so that's what it has going for it. In 2021, under the previous manager, this house generated $185,000 in gross booking revenue. 2022, we came in on January of 2022 with about 30% of the calendar already booked. That's not what we'd like to see, but it was already booked. That's what we came up with. We ended 2022 with $253 in gross booking revenue. So 2023, we ended with $345,000 in gross booking revenue. These are the pictures of the property. The reason why I show the pictures is so that everyone can see. These are nice properties, but these are not like pickleball court and bowling alley and Instagrammable wall type properties. They're nice, decent properties. So talking through this, really, this line here is 2021 when the previous manager was managing it. And essentially, he had in his mind what the value of that property was. And he, clearly you could see he thought it was somewhere between, $300 and $600 a night was kind of, where he had it pegged. And so that's how that was established. The other factor on this house is there's not another 12-bedroom mansion like this within a 500-mile radius. So there's no comp, no data really to say this is what this property should do. So when we came in 2022, basically we expanded that. It's not like $300 to $600. Let's push it a little bit and pushed it higher, and we were able to capture way higher occupancy at a higher rate. I think just really fast forward. 2023 was, again, some months were slower, some months were faster, but we were not constrained by, previous performance in terms of what we were willing to do. Oh, sorry. One thing that I really want to note is you see this dip in 2020, in the beginning of 2024. What had happened was we were having such a good year in 2023 that as early December rolled around, the owner wanted to push the rates even higher by $150 a night across the board. We started doing that, and that was too much. And that really took 2 months of very low performance. And so as we were in mid-January, we started correcting for it and got it back to normal. And then that's how we got it back up. Now we're up and down. We anticipate 2024 will finish at somewhere around $360,000 to $375,000 in gross booking revenue, which means over a course of 3 years, we doubled the revenue, even despite a slowdown in the overall economy. I think we would all agree 2021 and 2024 are very different economies. So going kind of back to what I said earlier on, for us, the data informs our decisions, but we make decisions around it, so the data does not drive our decisions. And by doing that, we're able to achieve these outsized results. Our approach might not look like a traditional golf swing, but the distance that we're able to achieve are sometimes phenomenal. But but that's how you use the tools. So you have to use the tools, because without the tools, we would not be able to service this large map and area. It would take way too much time and energy to analyze every market, every property. But because we have the tools and the automations that PriceLabs and other tools provide, we're able to kind of quickly adjust to the various markets and then start implementing and adjusting strategies throughout. So I will end it there. I'm sorry I spoke so quickly, but I wanted to respect everyone's time.
Thank you, John. It was a great presentation as well. I mean, I love the metaphors, especially the Formula One metaphor. I must say that as a Spanish, I would have, as much as I like Lewis, I would have preferred Fernando Alonso to be the driver, but it's fine. I think no hard feelings.
Next time, I will make sure.
Yes, you won me over with the Miles Morales Spider-Man metaphor, so I think we're good there.
Okay.
No, but seriously, thank you. It's really good to see not only because Becca explained how the tool works, and it's great to see how those tools put into action with actually someone driving those tools as well can give you that amount of revenue. I think it was the perfect complement, one presentation to the other. So thank you both. It's like 3 minutes to in my case, 8 p.m. It's going to depend on all the time zones, so I'm not going to try to translate the time zone to all of your areas, but we're like almost in the hour. But like I said, if it's okay with everyone, we're going to take a few more minutes because there are quite a lot of questions in the chat. So I'll just answer. Some of them were kind of like touched already. And Becca, you answered some of them. I also answered some of them that were more specific maybe to PriceLabs or Lodgify, but there were some others that were also very interesting and a bit more generalistic, and you kind of mentioned some of this, John, at some point. But it's about, let me see if I can pull that on screen. It's not a stupid question. I think it's a very interesting question. It's if other people are also using PriceLabs, how would I have had the edge over the competition? And also, there's a very related question. I think we can take them both at the same time, which I'm also going to pull now on screen, which is what if everyone uses the same methodology, wouldn't it mean like everyone dropping prices and it become like a race to the bottom in terms of prices? So basically, how does it work if everyone uses like PriceLabs or another dynamic pricing tool in this case?
Yeah. I can start with that. So one thing that I think is really important about the algorithm to understand, and I briefly touched on it, is we're not tying your prices to the market. So just because your competitors are priced at $100 a night or $1,000 a night, that doesn't mean that your listing is going to sort of also be priced there. The fear of a feedback loop is actually a big reason why we don't allow you to tie your prices to the market, right? If your competitor is watching you and saying, let me be 10% below John, and then John is watching us and saying, let me be 10% below Becca, then yes, definitely a race to the bottom is possible. With short-term rentals, the inventory is so unique. Your home is going to offer things that your neighbor's home isn't going to offer. So there are always differentiators. And honestly, yes, if people are dropping their prices in the low season and raising them in the high season, it's okay. Honestly, a lot of the hosts and property managers that I talk to, they are much happier when their competition starts using dynamic pricing tools, because it's almost like professionalizing the industry versus you against somebody else that's in your market that's just doesn't know what the market can handle and is pricing their home at $100 a night. They might be getting rented before other people just because they don't know any better. So while there is obviously, if everybody's doing the same thing, I understand that fear, but your base price is going to be very specific to your listing. Your own internal occupancy is going to, drive your pricing strategy as well. So there isn't really that problem.
And I'll quickly add, it's actually typically the folks who are not using it who makes this the race to the bottom, because they're going on to Airbnb, looking at each other and saying, hey, this guy, okay, my secret sauce is I'm going to price 10% below them, and that's how I'm going to win, right? And so typically the folks who are not using the dynamic pricing tools are the reason why we're kind of getting to the race to the bottom. The other way I'll say this is it's technology, right? If everyone on the street are using wheels on their car, should we not use wheels on the car, so that we're not racing to the bottom, right? Use the technology that's there. But I think the real important part is don't expect the technology just to magically do all the work for you. You need to either put in the time and effort to use the tool, or you need to hire someone into your internal team. But it's not this magic tool that you turn on a software and it's just going to somehow know. There was another question about properties are all different and in short-term rentals. That's not something for the tool to automatically figure out for you. You kind of have to understand that and then figure out what are the settings that I'm going to put in so that it accounts for the fact that mine's a unique property versus cookie cutter condo, right? That's the only way I can explain it. And again, if you can buy a hammer, but it's not going to build a house for you.
And I have to steal your analogies.
I think that ties in perfectly with the next question. I think you also, John, show examples of different types of properties, and in the end, this is a lot of what we're talking about as well. In the end, not all properties are equal. So does PriceLabs recognize different products, or as a revenue manager, how do you deal in the end with different properties? Because in the end, it's what you said. No, it's not just shooting the darts to the bullseye because every property is different. So how does PriceLabs and then the revenue manager in this case works with different properties?
Yeah, so for us, I mean, at the most basic level, your base price is sort of the foundation of your pricing. And within our tool, you can actually kind of explore a map of all the listings around you and look at what their average prices are. And maybe your neighbor has a pool and a really nice view, and your maybe condo is a little long in the tooth. You can kind of position yourself in your market using your base price. That's kind of like the first step. And then I think John mentioned this is your risk profile too. That's going to be very different from you versus your neighbor. Maybe you don't have a mortgage to pay and you don't, necessarily care about having it rented all the time, or you do have a mortgage to pay and you really, really need to, maximize. It's not just the specific property characteristics that you need to sort of, customize your strategy for, but also your owner's needs, your own needs. There's a lot to it, and then there's plenty of different levers to play with.
Thank you. Now the next question is going to be for John specifically, and it's as a revenue manager in general, how does it work? There's also another question about working with TechTape directly. So basically, do you take a share of the revenue that you manage? Is it a price fix? I mean, if you want to take this to make a little promotion about yourself, John, now it's the perfect time.
Sure. I came on not, I wasn't going to sell, but since you're asking me, no, we do the way we are structured, it is a percentage of revenue. And as you have a larger portfolio, we adjust the pricing, but it is a percentage of revenue. With smaller portfolios, we charge 5%. But then we also include the cost of a tool like PriceLabs within our system. And there are other revenue managers who do flat fee and whatnot. A revenue manager should always be a profit center and not a cost center. And so we have grown globally with our pricing structure, because we have been consistently able to deliver value above and beyond, what our partners were able to do and wanted to spend the time doing, and so that's how we are able to provide the service. But yes.
Thank you. There's actually Victor here that also is asking if you're clients. So we will share all the chat with you later, so you can also reach out to them specifically. There's also a couple of questions about Lodgify dynamic pricing and PriceLabs. How do they compare? In the end, they're very different tools. I would say, obviously, Lodgify dynamic pricing is a much more simple tool. Maybe it's a good way to get started, but in the end, you get like this, this fixed price based on the algorithm, what it analyzes, specifically answering Jenny's question. And basically, you can do some manual overrides, but it's a more simple tool, let's say. PriceLabs offers you way more flexibility in everything that, for example, Becca showed and John explained as well. Like, if you really want to take your property to the next level, you really need someone on board, and that's something that, for example, with PriceLabs, you can tune a lot of more things to make sure you get a more accurate price. I'm not saying Lodgify is not offering an accurate price. I'm just saying it's a more simple solution maybe to get you started. But in the end, I think the audience and the people using those tools are also going to be different, maybe, or a different point. I don't know, Becca, if you want to jump in, but I think that kind of simplifies a bit the differences.
No, I completely agree. I think, it's awesome that you guys launched this, and I was honestly really excited to see. I think it was like a month or two ago on LinkedIn when you announced it. No, it's really incredible because honestly, like I was saying, like a rising tide lifts all boats. Getting people to be more professional in their operations. If you don't have the time or energy to, explore third-party tools, if your tech stack is already like stressing you out, like start with Lodgify's tool. There's no problem. PriceLabs is always going to be here. We love our Lodgify partners. When you're ready to sort of like take your business to the next level, we are, kind of on the cutting edge of the industry. Things like our minimum stay recommendation engine, like I said, nobody else really does that. So we are 100% focused on revenue management, and that's all we do. But if you're just getting started, then a more simple tool is better than nothing for sure.
If I can add, you don't necessarily have to use like the most cutting edge tool, right? Like there are artists who use like just like pencil, right? And like they create amazing results, right? And then there are digital artists. What I would say is sometimes the cutting edge tool, there might be so many features or so many levers that if you're not ready for it, it might be very confusing. So if you're not ready, you could start with something that gets you going, like Becca and Alberto were saying. And then as you get more comfortable and you gain trust in the algorithm, you have to trust it at a certain point. Then you could start exploring and kind of growing into it.
Yeah. I agree. There's a lot of questions also because in the end, the algorithm looks at data in different areas. There's some questions specifically talking about different areas. I'm not sure if we're going to have time to cover all of this, but we will.
Yeah, I will say like any metro areas, we're going to have plenty of data. The only time where I've like been like, ooh, this is a pretty scarce market is if you have a really large home. So like John was saying, that's only 12-bedroom home within 500 miles. We're not going to have a ton of data for other 12-bedroom homes around that house. We will sometimes pull from other size bedroom counts just to supplement the data, but it's not a one-to-one, but it does help us understand demand a little bit. Also just like really rural markets, like I think it's like the Northern Territories in Canada, very scarce, not a lot of people up there. But generally speaking, in most markets, if there's like 30, 50 Airbnbs around you within like, 50 kilometers, we have plenty of data to work off of.
And I think we can take one or two more questions. And it's great that you mentioned Airbnb because there was one of these first questions about this. Let me pull it up. Yeah. So are we able to combine the Airbnb promotions on app with also the PriceLabs pricing, and how does in that case work, the integration?
Yeah, you should be able to do everything that you normally do on Airbnb with our integration. I kind of like to think of, and this is a question whether you're, on Airbnb or booking.com or wherever you're listing, even on your direct booking website, if you have like a 20% off discount code, you can sort of think of those as almost like marketing promotions. I would consider the pricing that you're doing within your revenue management tool like price optimization, pricing for the correct demand. And then, if you're doing a promotion on Airbnb and it gets you higher in the search results, you're almost sort of paying for that extra exposure in a sense.
Okay, so there was also a question about sharing the presentation. Yes, we will be sharing the presentations with the webinar recap that we will send tomorrow. I think we're a bit off time now. There's also some questions a bit more specific. I will share also the questions with both our speakers, and if some of them are just for them, I'll recap their information and add it. We will do a blog post recap as well with some of the Q&A that we could not cover, so we will try to include those questions there, as well as John or PriceLabs and TechTape contacts, so you can also reach out to them and try PriceLabs or get John and TechTape to manage your revenue management, your properties revenue management, basically. So yeah, thank you very much. I think we can leave it here. Thank you very much, Becca and John. I think it was super insightful to see how technology can help people and actually see real case studies on how to use the technology to maximize revenue. I think it's amazing to see technology put at the best use. And again, thank you for your presentations and your time. It was really good to have you.
Awesome.
Thank you, Alberto.
This has been great.
Cheers.